Why, despite its vast resources, is Africa often perceived as poor? This question unveils a profound paradox, a riddle wrapped in the continent's rich tapestry of landscapes and legacies. Imagine a land endowed with some of the world's largest reserves of minerals and gems, lush rainforests and vast savannas, yet frequently spotlighted for its struggles, rather than its wealth. Africa, a continent of 54 countries, is far from homogeneous. It boasts a mosaic of cultures, languages, and economies, each with its unique vibrancy and challenges. From the bustling markets of Nigeria to the serene landscapes of Namibia, the diversity is staggering. Yet the global narrative often paints Africa with a singular brush of poverty and need. This perception doesn't arise in a vacuum. It's shaped by historical contexts and present-day realities, where wealth in natural resources hasn't translated directly into widespread economic prosperity for all its people. To understand this, we must delve into a history marked by external influences and internal challenges. Colonialism did not just redraw maps, it reshaped economies. Indeed, the shadow of colonialism stretches long and deep across the African continent. When European powers carved up Africa in the late 19th century, they were not merely drawing borders, they were setting the stage for a systematic extraction of wealth and resources that would persist for decades. The colonial powers structured the economies of African nations to serve European interests, turning richly diverse regions into mere exporters of raw materials and importers of manufactured goods. This economic configuration was designed not to develop but to drain, funneling Africa's wealth northward and leaving behind economies that were dependent and underdeveloped. Take for instance the Belgian exploitation in the Congo, a stark example of colonial greed. Under King Leopold II, the Congo was treated less like a colony and more like a corporate asset. The extraction of rubber and ivory was prioritized over the well-being of the Congolese people, leading to unspeakable human suffering and a devastating impact on societal structures. This brutal exploitation was not an isolated incident but a vivid illustration of broader colonial practices across the continent. Similarly, British colonial policies in Nigeria focused on the extraction of palm oil, cocoa, and other resources. Agricultural policies were implemented to support these cash crops, essential for British industries at the expense of local food production. This not only destabilized local economies but also entrenched a pattern of economic dependence that Nigeria and many other African nations have struggled to overturn. Even as these countries gained independence, the economic frameworks left by colonial rulers proved difficult to dismantle. The infrastructures were not built to support self-sufficient economies, but were instead entangled in a global economic system that favored the developed world. These historical decisions have left a lasting imprint on Africa's economic structures. The legacies of these actions are visible today in the economic challenges that many African nations continue to face. A thorough understanding of this past is crucial to addressing the present and reshaping the future. Gaining independence marked a new chapter but not the end of economic challenges. As the colonial flags were lowered across Africa, from the bustling markets of Nigeria to the sweeping plains of Kenya, a wave of optimism swept through the continent. Newly independent nations dreamed of self-determination and prosperity. However, the reality of independence was far more complex and fraught with challenges that many did not foresee. The ink had barely dried on the documents of independence when many African countries found themselves grappling with unstable governments. The sudden transition from colonial rule to self-governance meant that there were limited experienced leaders. In many cases, the power vacuum led to a series of military coups and authoritarian regimes. For instance, within just 3 decades post-independence, more than 60 coups had taken place across Africa. Each change in government brought new policies and often a shift in economic priorities, which in turn led to economic instability. Corruption further exacerbated the situation. It seeped into various layers of government, distorting economic development and eroding public trust. Funds meant for public infrastructure, healthcare, and education often vanished into the pockets of the elite, leaving the general populace suffering. This misuse of resources meant that the potential for a robust economic foundation, crucial for any flourishing nation, was severely compromised. Moreover, the shadow of foreign influence did not disappear with the end of colonialism. external powers continued to play a significant role, often prioritizing their own economic or strategic interests over the development of the nations they were involved with. This neo-colonial influence came in various forms, through direct political interference, economic pressures, or through the control of essential resources. Such dynamics often meant that the economic policies and practices in these countries were skewed to benefit foreign entities rather than the local populace. The road post-independence was fraught with hurdles that many nations are still trying to overcome. These interwoven challenges of unstable governments, corruption, and external influence have created a complex tapestry that continues to stifle economic progress and political stability in many African nations. As these countries stride into the future, the echoes of their turbulent post-independence histories continue to resonate, reminding us that the journey towards economic stability and autonomy is both arduous and ongoing. In an interconnected world, Africa faces unique modern challenges. As we delve deeper into the 21st century, the continent grapples with a host of issues that stem from both internal dynamics and the global economic framework. Among these, the burden of debt, reliance on a limited spectrum of exports, and the impacts of globalization stand out, painting a complex picture of Africa's economic landscape. Let's start with the debt issue. Many African nations are saddled with substantial external debts, which significantly hamper their ability to invest in their own development. These debts often arise from loans taken to build infrastructure or to stabilize economies during crises. However, the terms of these loans can be onerous, with high interest rates and short repayment periods. Consequently, a large portion of national budgets is dedicated to servicing these debts, rather than addressing vital social needs such as education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Moving on, Africa's dependence on a narrow range of exports is another critical vulnerability. For many countries on the continent, the economy heavily relies on one or two primary commodities, such as oil, diamonds, or precious metals. This specialization makes them highly susceptible to fluctuations in global commodity prices. When prices fall, entire economies can teeter, leading to widespread economic instability and social unrest. Furthermore, the impact of globalization on Africa cannot be underestimated. While globalization has opened markets and brought investment, it has also placed African producers in direct competition with global firms, often at a disadvantage. Local industries struggle to compete with cheaper imported goods, leading to a decline in local manufacturing and job losses. Additionally, the global economic policies and trade agreements often favor the more developed economies, making it difficult for African nations to climb up the value chain and develop more diversified economies. These modern dynamics continue to shape Africa's economic landscape in significant ways. As we look at the continent's interaction with the global economy, it's clear that these challenges are not just remnants of the past, but ongoing hurdles that need innovative solutions and cooperative international strategies. International aid, a helping hand with strings attached. Across the vast landscapes of Africa, international aid has often been seen as a beacon of hope. Indeed, billions of dollars have flowed into the continent, aiming to alleviate poverty and foster development. On the surface, it appears benevolent, but the reality is more intricate. Aid has played a crucial role in providing essential services such as healthcare and education. In times of crisis, international support has been pivotal in delivering emergency relief to affected populations. However, this glittering generalization masks a more complex narrative. Critically, aid has also fostered a dependency syndrome. Some African nations have become heavily reliant on external financial support, which can undermine local industries and agriculture. This reliance can stifle innovation and entrepreneurship, essential drivers for sustainable growth. Moreover, the conditions often attached to aid can influence domestic policies, sometimes aligning more with the donor's interests than the recipient's needs. The complexity of international aid illustrates the need for nuanced approaches to supporting African economies. What does the future hold for Africa's economic development? As we look ahead, the continent shows vibrant signs of progress and untapped potential that could pave the way for a prosperous future. Africa is not just rich in natural resources, it's also burgeoning with opportunities in technology, renewable energy, and trade. The digital revolution, for instance, is sweeping across the continent. Young African entrepreneurs are harnessing the power of mobile technology to leapfrog traditional stages of development. From mobile banking to e-health services, these innovations are not just creating jobs, but are also solving some of the continent's most persistent challenges: renewable energy, is another bright spot in Africa's economic landscape. With vast tracts of land suitable for solar farms and significant potential for wind energy, especially along the coasts, Africa could become a global leader in clean energy. Countries like Kenya are already making strides with geothermal energy, while Morocco's investments in solar technology are well recognized on the international stage. Furthermore, the enhancement of intracontinental trade stands as a game-changer for Africa's economic fortunes. The implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, or AfCFTA, promises to redefine relationships within the continent itself. By reducing trade barriers and enhancing connectivity, AfCFTA could increase intra-African trade significantly, fostering better economic integration and providing a substantial boost to the continent's collective GDP. Education and infrastructure development continue to play crucial roles. Investing in education will ensure a steady flow of skilled professionals to drive these industries forward. Simultaneously, improving infrastructure is essential to support the growing demands of urbanization and industrialization, facilitating smoother trade and access to markets. Indeed, while challenges remain, the forward momentum is palpable. Strategic investments in technology, sustainable energy, and trade infrastructure, coupled with a robust commitment to education and governance, could dramatically alter the economic landscape of Africa. With strategic initiatives and sustainable practices, Africa has the potential to reshape its economic destiny.